All right, welcome everybody. So I'm going to invite us to start in a child's pose shape today. And you're welcome to do this in sort of a restorative way if you like. We're going to just do our little centering here. Keep in mind, of course, if child's pose doesn't work for you, feel free to take any shape that does. You don't need any props for child's pose, but you could have a bolster, for example, and just take it between your knees so that your knees are nice and wide. And sometimes it's nice to elevate the top edge of it a little bit as well. And sometimes I like that because I can kind of wrap my arms around it. It's sort of a little bit comforting. And then you can take a cheek down onto the bolster if you're working that way. Or maybe just no props, forehead on the floor, or your hands, or even hands beside the hips. And then taking a few deep breaths just to settle in, and feel free to kind of fidget around as you need to with that as well. So we've got a full moon right today, sort of tonight, so that's going to be happening. And I'm definitely feeling both a need to ground, which child's pose is really nice for, and also to move a little bit. So we'll do a little bit of that kind of more flowing action a bit later on in the class as well. But for now, just taking your time to settle into the earth, to breathe. And to notice what your system might be wanting to release, which a full moon is a good time for releasing, for letting go, concluding. As you're tuning into your body and your breath, noticing also the land that you're on, the earth beneath your body. Your relationship with this land. Feeling yourself as a part of the web of everything. We'll take a little bit more time here. If you have your cheek turned to one side, you may want to turn it the other way. And then we'll just kind of slowly, lazily make our way into some movement. So maybe you're taking a nice deep breath here just to kind of acknowledge how you're feeling. And then climbing up to your hands and your knees. And if you have been in child's pose with me, you'll probably want to just tuck the toes of one foot back, pressing out through the heel. And then do that on the other side. Downward dog would have a similar effect. We'll get there eventually, but you may not want to go right up into it right away. It's up to you. And then we'll take some cat and cows. So knees under the hips, fingers spread under the shoulders, or fists works well, or even elbows. And just inhaling into a little back bend. And exhaling to round. And I do really quite like to do this with the eyes closed. So it's not so much that we're trying to do a particular shape, but that cat and cow is a nice opportunity to explore what we're feeling along the spine and the hips and the core, shoulders. So you might find that you want to add some side to side motion or some circles. Just exploring. Nice deep breaths. If you can, matching your breath with your movement. And just for the record, I quite like doing cat and cow on the elbows. It just feels a little bit different to me. I like how it feels on my shoulders. That's something you could try if you haven't yet. Beautiful. And then when you're ready, let's stretch out the upper back. So if you have a block, I quite like doing this with a block in between the hands. If you don't have a block, you can do a variation called Anahatasana, which is up on the fingertips. Okay, so either you're reaching the fingertips out kind of like this, or you've got the block between the palms with your elbows down. And then you're going to widen your knees and maybe walk them back a little bit or the hands forward. The idea is just to start to kind of melt the heart back towards the thighs. The chin or the forehead may touch down. And you could continue to explore a little bit of maybe swaying from side to side, for example, or just being still. I love that this one for those sticky spots in the upper back. And if you do have that block, you can just gently press into it with your hands. And then when that feels complete for you, let's come to our bellies. And if you're not on your belly today, you could sit on your heels and do the movements with the hands. So I'll talk you through what we're going to do on the belly. Just if you're seated, doing some cactus arms is a really nice, it's very similar kind of intention, but just not having to lay on the belly. So feel free to take that. Otherwise, let's take a simple cactus arm lift. So pressing the tops of the feet down, pubic bone down, engaging the glutes. Palms are down in this kind of cactus shape beside you. And then as you inhale, we're just gently lifting the chest and the elbows. And on the exhale, gently coming down. So just take a few of those with your own breath. It's really nice for kind of massaging the lower back. Can be nice for the digestion as well. Shoulders, of course. Try to think shoulders down, neck long. And then next time you come up, if it works for you, just pause for a breath or two, holding not your breath, just the pose. Nice long spine, long belly. And gently release, take a little rest. If you're seated, just relax your hands. You can wobble your hips a little bit from side to side if you'd like, if you're on your belly. And let's do one more here. So if you're seated, you could do the same cactus arms, or you could practice interlacing your fingers behind your back and opening the chest that way. Okay, if you're on your belly with me, let's take strange cobra. So fingertips come off the mat to the right and the left. Again, grounding the tops of the feet, pubic bone down, gently lifting up as you inhale. Think elbows slightly down and together. And And then lower. And I know a lot of you like the twist, as I do too. So we'll rise up, and then if it feels good, you can look to the left and dip your right shoulder down towards the earth. Up through center, look right and dip your opposite shoulder. Try to keep your hips steady, so it's just your upper back that's moving here. Maybe let's do that one more time each side if it's working for you. And then up through center. And gently release down to your belly and take a rest. Again, you can wobble your hips. If you're seated, maybe you want to do a little seated cat and cow. And then let's meet back in child's pose. Taking your knees again as wide as you like them. Maybe trying them a little closer together and just seeing how that feels for you. And then walk your hands over to one side. I'm going to the left, reaching the right fingertips out to the left and letting my right hip kind of move a little bit to the right. So I get this lovely stretch along my side waist, lower back. And then when you're ready, through center and over to the other side, reaching those left fingertips to the right and allowing your left hip to kind of lean a little bit to the left. Just getting that nice side stretch. And then gently back through center. Come back up to your hands and your knees, and let's try a downward facing dog this time. So again, if that's not working for you, you can just extend one leg back at a time. Otherwise, you can tuck the toes, walk the hands a little bit farther forward and maybe a bit wider, and lift up your hips, pressing one heel down at a time, kind of massaging the calves and the hamstrings. Soft, slight bend to the elbows. Think shoulders nice and deep into their sockets. Let your neck be relaxed. Kind of working your weight back into your feet. Still breathing. And then let's walk the feet to the hands, coming into a standing forward bend. Feet hips distance or wider is great. Knees as bent as you need them to be, including bent enough that you can rest your elbows on your knees. You can hang down or have your fingertips on the earth. You can sway or be still. Just letting this feel good for you, whatever that means today. And sometimes there's a bit of experimentation to kind of see what is the place that my body needs today. And again, bending one knee at a time can feel really nice. Whatever it is that you're doing, just try to keep your breath sort of conscious and deep. It doesn't have to be any specific kind of breath. But when we can kind of combine the movement with the breath, it's quite calming for the nervous system generally. And then when you're ready, let's gently roll to standing, one vertebrae at a time. So you can bend your knees really generously, lean back into your heels and slowly rise. If you want to come up a different way, of course, that's totally fine. And just gently making your way to stand. And one way of thinking about standing is, how could I stand in such a way that I'm working as little as possible? So the most easeful possible standing posture. Nothing is working particularly harder than any other part of your body. The bones are just balanced easily on the earth. Breath is flowing. And maybe that includes some movement or micro adjusting. It doesn't have to be a static shape. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm feeling the need to just move a little bit to kind of work through. Thank you, Laurel, for pointing out that the full moon is today. That explains a lot for me. And I've been aware of it, but I didn't realize we were actually on the day of. So we'll move a little bit. And if you like, you could place your hands together at your heart or even over top and take a moment just to feel into intention. And generally around the full moon, it's nice to set an intention to close or let go or release. It's sort of a moment where we can consciously be in endings. And there might be something there for you. And then we'll fold that intention into our breath. So as you next inhale, you can reach your arms wide and up to the sky. And then exhale, dive over your legs, bending the knees generously, folding down. Halfway lift, drawing the heart forward. Exhale, maybe out the mouth and fold. Bend your knees, rising all the way up, maybe leaning back a bit if you want. Hands can come to the heart as you exhale. Inhale, rising up. Exhale, diving down. Halfway lift. And fold. Bend the knees, rising all the way to standing. Hands to heart. So let's take a few more. Okay, just going at your own pace. Take your time. Don't worry too much about the specific poses. Just inhaling up, exhaling down is enough. And you could have your eyes closed and just kind of think about this intention. What is it that you would like to release, let go of, say goodbye to? What are you ready to let go of your harvest? And don't be afraid to exhale at the mouth at any point in the sequence, even making some sound. Taking about one more full round. No rush. Just eventually returning to standing. Hands could be at your heart, over top, resting by your sides, just taking a moment to feel, to receive. Okay, so from here, let's just soften the knees and we'll take a step back into warrior one. So the right foot can step back, the toes are turned a little bit forward. You can start by bending your back knee slightly, drawing your tailbone down and squaring your hips forward. Then work the back leg towards straight and then bend into your front leg. So I'm hoping at this point you're feeling a pretty good stretch into the front of the back thigh. Okay, you can interlace your fingers except for the first one and reach your arms up to the sky. Thinking just really nice long belly. Think of lifting kind of from the insides of the ribs, but notice if your shoulders are trying to do that and just soften them a little bit. You could also have your hands more forward or even your hands separated if you're getting a little too much tension in the shoulders. And if this is all feeling good, you might try side bending to the left. That's away from your back leg and just getting even more length into that lovely right side. And then come up through center, bring your hands to your hips and straighten your front leg again. Hug those elbows back and tip forward. You might want to use your blocks for this. You could put your hands on them if the floor feels a bit far away. You can also adjust your stance. Sometimes it's helpful to have the feet a little bit wider or farther apart or closer together. Okay, think of lifting your heart and drawing your left hip back behind you so the hips are squaring forward again. And then you might gently melt over the leg. And some of you might choose to stay here. Some of you might want to be a little bit more in the flow, lifting the chest on the inhale, exhaling to gently fold. Just see where you're at. Okay, you could close your eyes if that's comfortable for you and just focus on those nice deep breaths. Notice if you're holding tension in your neck and see what it might look like to soften it a little bit. Nice, everybody. Let's take another deep breath. And then simply step forward. So just bringing that back foot up to meet the front one. Take a halfway lift. Exhale, gently fold. Bend your knees, rising all the way up. Hands together in front of your heart. Just taking a brief moment here to feel the difference between the two sides. And then step your left foot back. So we'll take that sequence on the second side. And again, for warrior one, don't be afraid to have your feet be at least hips distance apart. They could even be a bit wider apart widthwise. It can help a lot, especially in the fold. So let's slightly bend the back knee, square the hips forward, press that back heel into the earth, draw the tailbone down, and then you can work the back leg towards straight as you bend into the front one. And again, if you're feeling that stretch kind of in the front of the back thigh, you're good, okay? You don't have to be in like a really deep lunge position to feel the benefit of this pose, which for me is the stretch back here. There are other ways to do the pose, but I like that to be here. Okay, you can interlace your fingers except for the first one and take that same mudra up to the sky if it works for you. Again, if it doesn't, hands wide is great, arms a bit more forward, that all works. And you know, ideally you're in a place where you feel like there's some stretch or some sensation or there's something interesting for you about the pose, but it's not creating stress. So don't be afraid to modify a little bit if there's something that could be a bit more comfortable for you. And you can try adding that little side stretch if everything's feeling good and just see if that adds anything for you. And gently come back through center, bring your hands to your hips and straighten that front leg. And again, it's okay to widen your stance even a bit more. Some people like to shorten it a little bit. as well. Okay, squaring those hips, drawing the shoulders and elbows back, lift the heart, and then fold down and bring your hands to blocks or the floor if appropriate. And then take a little halfway lift, see how that feels, draw the hip back. And then you might fold and stay, or you might flow, lifting and lengthening as you inhale, and softening as you exhale. So just see where you're at today. I find often if I can do a bit of movement, then stillness is easier. And there's never stillness in the breath. There's always a rise and fall. Beautiful. And then when you feel ready, you can simply gently step up to the top of your mat again. Take a halfway lift again. You might want to exhale out your mouth. And then bend the knees and rise all the way up or roll up if you want. Either's fine. Bring the hands to your heart or over top. I'm just taking a moment to feel and receive. Beautiful. Okay, let's take the feet about mat distance apart and turn the toes out. We're going to try for a squat. So you can again bring your hands together at your heart, bend your knees, and you might rest elbows on knees, or you might sink your hips sort of all the way down. And you know, the classical squat is kind of a freestanding sort of thing, but you might find that you need to sit on a block or have props underneath your heels, for example, or even just sit right down on the ground. Okay, we're going to be here for a little bit, so feel free to change that as you need to. Okay, just getting nice and tall through the spine, drawing the shoulders back, and just letting the hips be nice and heavy. And then when you're ready, you can bring your right hand down on the inside of your right leg. Left hand can start at your knee and you can just gently twist open to the left. You can stay there or reach the hand back or even take a half bind, wrapping it around your back towards the right hip crease, drawing the shoulders down and back, turning your heart to the sky, and then maybe gently releasing some of the weight of your head. And then look down, gently come back through center. Remember, it's totally fine to sit on your bum and have your feet just a little bit wider apart, okay? Let's take the other side. Left hand comes down, right hand to the knee, gently opening. Maybe stay or reach the arm back or even take that half bind. And then release some of the weight of the head towards the earth. Keep your legs just a little bit active so they're not collapsing in. And then gently unwind. Come back through center. Take a breath if you can stand just to be here. One more breath. And then sit your bum down onto the ground if you haven't already. And then you can take your legs into a little windshield wiper. You might also want to extend the legs and give them a nice wobble. Good. Let's say hello to our cores, okay? So let's come and lay down on our back. So you can hold the backs of the legs or have your arms free and roll down in a breath or so. Just not if you're pregnant or if your back is hurting or if you just don't want to do that. Roll to your side first and then lay on your back, okay? And we're not overdoing that particular movement. It's just a transition for now. Okay, feet on the floor, knees point up to the sky. Take a moment just to feel what's going on. Take a nice deep breath. Inhale, And as you exhale, just gently find the core muscles. So engage the pelvic floor in and up, and imagine the hip points and the points of the ribs in the front are drawing together in towards the belly button. Okay. And then just keep that. So you're going to be breathing sort of into the lungs, into the diaphragm, just keeping the belly nice and supported. You keep your head down on the ground, or you can interlace your fingers behind the back of your head and gently lift the shoulder blades up off the mat. And we're going to start with our marching, which I'm just really a fan of right now. Okay. So you're going to lift your leg, right leg, as you inhale. And then as you exhale, put it down. And then inhale, lift the left. And as you exhale, put it down. So just nice and simple. I've been doing this one a lot lately. You guys might have noticed. I'm just a really big fan of this one. It's quite safe for most people, and I find it's actually really effective for just getting into those deep core muscles. And I'll give you some other options as we go too, but it's nice to just start here. Try to relax your head into your hands if you've got your head lifted. You can absolutely do this with your head down. And if you're wanting to add on a little bit, you're feeling pretty good, you can float both of your feet and then just tap the foot down one at a time. So that's just going to add a little bit more work to the core. And at this point, it doesn't matter too much where the inhale and where the exhale is. Okay. You might find there's some benefit in, well, both really. There's different reasons why you might want to do both, but this isn't too compressed here, so you don't need to worry too much about it. Generally, you want to exhale A, when there's more compression to the belly. Okay, so that's an argument for when the knee lifts. But B, when you're working, like when you need a little extra power. So that's an argument for when the toes come down. So just following your breath, keep drawing that belly in. Let's take one more each side if you are willing. And then when that's complete for you, relax. You can take soles of the feet together, knees open wide, or knees together, feet wide. And just take some nice conscious breaths into your belly. Okay, so I'm just gonna offer one more round for core, and you have a few options now. So you can do the marching, you can do that with the feet lifted, or you can follow me for, not that this is necessarily it's a little harder than the marching, but it's just a little bit different. So if you wanna come with me for this one, just sort of trying something a little bit different, you're gonna lift both of your feet up. Bring your knees together, feet together, so they're kind of squeezing in. And you can point or floint, as Coco used to say, the toes. So the toes are nice and active, but you can press the ball of your foot down like you're kind of when you're pressing on the gas. Okay. Shoulder blades can be lifted, and just take a moment to find, is the pelvic floor engaged? Is the belly button drawing back? Okay. Inhale, and as you exhale, actually, well, let me think about that in a moment. You're going to tap the feet towards or to the ground, and then bring the knees back up. Okay, so yes, on the inhale, the legs are going to move away from you, even though you're working a bit harder there, because on the exhale and the knees come back, you might want to add a little crunch, and you would want that to be the exhale. Okay, so inhale, the knees come down, they may or may not touch, just very lightly. On the exhale, the knees can come up, and you might add a little bit of a crunch, sort of gathering the knees and the elbows together. Wherever you are, just thinking about really drawing the belly button back to the spine. Okay, so this is a pretty powerful one because it gets a lot of different areas of the abdominal region. It helps if you keep the toes active and squeeze the legs together. Let's try for 4. For 3. And if you've had enough, that's okay. For 2. Last one if you've got one in you. And relax. Soles of the feet together, knees open wide or the opposite, or whatever works for you. Just take a few nice deep breaths. You can sigh if you want. Good. Okay, so this next little movement that we're going to do is also a strengthening movement, but for the glutes rather than the core, and then we're going to do some releases with that as well, okay? And we're not going to do too many of these. So I've just got my feet on the floor underneath my knees, and I'm going to have my hands either down beside my hips, or I quite like robot arms. I just find that that's quite comfortable for me. So either of those is fine. And inhale, engage the core, engage the belly gently. And we're just going to lift the hips. So we're not trying to come into a big back bend here. We're doing a little bit of glute strengthening. So we're going to lower back down just to not quite touch the floor. Okay. Exhale to press up. Inhale to gently release almost to the floor. So don't worry about the back bend right now. This is more like a Pilates bridge than a yoga bridge. So we're not worried about the back bend. We're more so just wanting to get the glutes activated. And one of the ways you can really help yourself with that is by pressing into the heels. So really initiating the movement from the heels will tend to get the muscles of the glutes going, as opposed to other muscles that might try to take over if your glutes are not used to working, which a lot of our glutes are, but sometimes things can get a little funky in the body, and it's really beneficial to just work the glutes a little bit, make sure that they're supporting the sacrum, among other things. And we'll just do one more. And this one we can go into the yoga bridge shape. So coming up a little bit, now we can press into the elbows, press into the feet a little bit more forward if you like, hug the elbows together, maybe even interlace the fingers under the body. And if this is all feeling like a little too much, just come down and relax, that's fine. I'm feeling my glutes. I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling like, oh yeah, they worked a little bit. And then we'll gently release down. And again, take a rest. Knees together or apart is fine. That's the only one of those we're going to do. And we'll take a lovely little release from here as well. So this is related to bridge, but it feels a little bit different. So you're going to take a prop. Brick is ideal if you have that. Bolster works too. Folded blanket, lower prop, extra yoga mat. Anything that's comfortable enough for you to rest your hips on is fine. And if you don't have any props, don't worry about it. You can do it without. Okay, so you're just going to place that prop under your bum. I find usually the lowest edge of the brick is fine for me. Sometimes I'll do 2 bricks stacked on top of each other, but lately I like it a little bit gentler, subtler. And it's just under the back of the pelvis. So where the front of the hips are, it would be just right behind that, essentially. Okay, from here, we'll draw the left knee in towards the chest and extend the right leg long. You're going to hold the left knee with your interlaced fingers and hug it a little bit towards the left shoulder. Flex the right foot and press forward into the leg. So we're not trying to lift it up. We're trying to extend it, almost like stretch it out from the body. And breathe into the belly. And I'm hoping this feels like a lovely release into the hip flexor. And a little bit into the core. This is a bit of a funny variation, but I'll offer it. This is a little bit of a Julie experimentation, you just kind of enjoy. So you can reach your right arm up as well. So your whole right side is stretching. Just get a little longer through the right side and then hug the right arm and leg into the midline a little bit more. And I find that that's just such a lovely stretch. Almost a side bend. Okay, and then we'll gently release, just bringing one foot to the floor and then the other. Take a breath just to soften into that, to notice maybe the difference in the 2 sides. And then switch sides, so hugging in the right knee, extending the left leg out, flexing that left foot, and pressing forward. So not trying to lift it up, letting it be nice and heavy. And the right knee goes a bit wide to the right. And breathing down into the belly. I'm hoping this feels good for you guys. It's definitely one that is quite delightful for me. If it's uncomfortable in your lower back at all, you would want to go for a lower prop or even no prop. But hopefully it feels good. And then if you want to try that funny little side bend-ish variation with me, you can reach your left arm up, stretch along the left side, and then hug the foot and the arm just in towards the midline a bit. And then back through center, gently releasing one foot and then the other. Take a moment to receive that, softening. And then why not all arms and legs? Reaching the arms up. You could hold opposite elbows or interlace the fingers up above you. Flex the feet, stretch everything nice and long, and hug the legs a little bit together. Like you're trying to stretch your belly. And gently release when you're ready, stepping one foot to the floor and then the other. Take a moment just to feel that. And then when you're ready, you can remove that block and just take a moment to rest. So some of you might want to hug the knees in, others may want to extend the legs long. Either is great. Just taking a moment to receive that. And then when you're ready, I'll invite you to roll to one side. I'm coming to my left side. We're not going to do too much of the outer hip opening or strengthening rather. We'll just do a little bit because we know it's so good for us. And it's nice to just keep these muscles kind of on their toes. So I'm on my side, head is in line with the rest of the spine, nice little natural inward curve in the lower back, and the knees are just slightly down of the hips, not right in line. Okay, toes are flared. Okay, and then we're just gonna open the knees like a book and close them again. So just a simple clamshell. Keeping the sacrum nice and straight up and down. And I find it quite helps me when I have a tendency to sort of lean back, just to press my knee almost forward and then up. I find I'm just like, oh, there is my outer hip muscle for sure, if I hadn't been feeling it yet. Just two more. And relax. If you like, you can take your soft fist and just give those muscles a little gentle pat, especially if you find that they do go a little bit like, ooh, sometimes they get a bit tight for me. Sometimes they're like a little surprised. And then you're just gonna hug your knees up a little bit more towards your hips so they're roughly in line. And then your feet are in line with the knees. So you have this kind of 90-degree situation with your legs. And this can always change if it doesn't work for you. Just take a moment to make sure you do have that inward curve in your lower back. You're not rounded there. And then you can lay your head down, reach the right arm or top arm up and open, coming into a twist from here. Okay, so you might want to have a block between the knees. It's okay with me if they separate a little bit, but if you're feeling like this is too compressive or just not comfortable, you can point your knees down again or separate them kind of in a deer position, like a windshield wiper twist. And you might find coming in this way that your shoulder doesn't quite want to reach the floor. That's okay as long as you're not getting sort of tingling in your arm. If you are, you could put your hand on your ribs. That usually resolves that. And you might try kind of rocking your head to the right and maybe holding it there or maybe staying in a little bit of a rock, kind of encouraging this gentle twist along the upper spine. And then when that feels complete for you, just gently roll onto your side again and take a little rest. You can rest your head on your arm. And then we'll come to the other side. So you can just roll over. So I'm going to flip. So I'm going to lay on my right side now. My head in line with my spine, inward curve in the lower back, and the knees are a little bit pointed down. So they're kind of halfway between in line with the knees and in line with the hips in a straight line. You guys know what I mean. Flare the toes, gentle engagement through the belly, and we'll just do that simple clamshell. But we're making it count by pressing the knee a little bit forward and up. And when I say making it count, what I mean is we're trying to really activate those outer hip muscles so that they know how to support the lower back, how to support the sacrum, the pelvic floor, how to help keep us balanced. And I find as many of you have, as you've let me know, this little bit of work is so beneficial for lower back pain, especially when you have kind of chronic issues with your lower back, which I do have some sacral stuff that comes and goes. And I'm aiming for 8 here, and I absolutely can't count while I'm talking, so I'm going to say one more. If you've been counting, go by your own count. Okay, and then you can gently pad out your outer hip if that feels good. And then we'll just hug those knees up a little bit more, and the feet may move away a little bit so that you're in this kind of 90 degrees with your legs, 90 degrees with your thighs and torso. But then just double check that you do have that natural inward curve in your back. We don't want to have a rounded lower back. Okay. And then relaxing your head down, taking that left arm up and open, and just go slow. I find when I come into the twist this way, it's just quite different. There's a lot more going on in my chest and shoulders, which is why I like to do this twist this way. And I'm just noticing for myself, yep, this side is way tighter. I'm definitely noticing a difference here. You may notice something similar. Keeping the knees roughly together, but you don't need them to be kind of clamped together necessarily right now. You could have a block between them. You could move your knees down a bit or a lot if this is feeling a little too much on any part of your body. And again, maybe you're doing that little sort of nodding of your head to the left. Just a gentle turn to the left, release, turn to the left, release. Softening that shoulder down. Any tingling or pinching electric sensations, just put your hand on your ribs. And then when you're ready, we'll gently come back to center, or to laying on the side, sorry, is what I meant by center. It's not really center, is it? And just taking a breath. Okay, and then we can come up to a seat just gently. And I'd love for us to take pigeon from here. Pigeon is a hip opener. There are a lot of hip openers. If pigeon isn't your friend, you could do thread the needle or anyone that does work for you. And if you have a bolster, I really recommend it for pigeon because it makes it somehow easier, but also more direct, like it gets into the muscles a little bit better, I find. So if you have that bolster, just have a seat on it near the top of your mat. So you've got a little bit of mat in front of you, most of your mat's behind you. If you don't have a bolster, you could use a rolled yoga mat, you could use a rolled towel or blanket, or you could just have any prop kind of handy. If you don't have any props, you need to work a little harder. So we'll lean to the right, taking the right shin down, and then swing the left leg around behind. This is a medium place called 90-90. You could fold over here, or see if you can straighten out that back leg. Wobble on your bolster, a little forward and back, a little side to side. Ideally, you want both of your hips supported, your knee, your front knee completely on the ground, and your foot in an angle that's comfortable. There shouldn't be any pain in your knee. I like to have blocks too. I don't always use them, but if I have them, I'll press up into them, just get nice and long through the spine, pressing into the top of the foot, maybe even lifting the kneecap. And if that's feeling like what you need, you can stay up here, or you can come down onto your elbows, maybe a block under the chest or the shoulders. Maybe you're just using your fists underneath your forehead. Kind of see what works for you here. And again, there should be no pain in the knee. Okay, so if there is, please adjust or come right out of the pose. And a little trick for this one is, if you shift a bit forward on the bolster, you'll have more space. If you shift back on the bolster, you'll have a little less space and the shape will feel a little bit more intense. Just a couple more breaths here, and don't be afraid to exhale out your mouth if there is something that you're feeling like you need to let go of. And then when you're ready, you can climb back up to your hands, lean over onto your right hip, and bring the back leg around to the front. And I find the windshield wipers can be quite nice after that. And or extending the legs out and just giving them a little wobble. Sometimes the knee does get a little bit compressed. And then we'll switch sides. So leaning left, swinging the right leg around behind, and just if you can, straighten it. If you can't, you're just going to be leaning more of your weight onto that left hip. Wobbling a little bit to find your spot, forward, back, side to side. Where is that spot that you need today? Maybe taking your blocks or just fingertips and rising up, pressing into the top of the back foot, lengthening. Raja Kapotasana, this is pigeon pose. King pigeon is a slightly different variation, but you can imagine that kind of puffed up chest. And then we come down, it's called sleeping pigeon. So you can bring your elbows down to blocks or the floor or wherever works for you. A block under the forehead can really make this pose a lot more comfortable for the shoulders. And again, this should be painless in the knees. If you're not supporting with props, again, you might be leaning all the way onto your left hip, or you might be just really using your muscles to hold yourself up a little bit more. You don't want to kind of be hanging in space. I should have mentioned this on the first side. I know most of you guys know this, but if you don't have a bolster in a pose like this, you just have a block or something, you would wedge it underneath your elevated hip. Softening into that hip opening. And don't be afraid to sigh. It's good for the nervous system. Beautiful. And then when that feels complete for you, you can gently rise up, lean over onto that left hip, bring the back leg around to the front. And again, you can take the windshield wipers and or shake out the legs. So I'd like to wind down towards Shavasana. And if you do have a bolster, I'd love to use it. Okay, so you can bring it around behind you. If you don't, you can use a block. It would just go in between the shoulder blades. You could use a rolled up blanket, or if you don't have anything, you can just lay flat. If you've got the bolster, sit up close to the edge of it. If you have those higher rounded bolsters, I would just move them a little bit more away. The flat ones, like the one I'm using here, you can have it pretty much right up against your bum. At least at first, try butterfly legs. If you have a couple of blocks, you can support your knees with them. And then lay back. A few different options for your hands. Hands on hips, arms open in a T shape or a cactus shape. Okay, just see which is comfortable for you, which feels right. You might keep your legs in this butterfly shape, or if that's not feeling good for your hips or knees, just go ahead and extend your legs out like a nice wide kind of Shavasana stance. And begin to really soften into this gentle passive heart opening. And again, the full moon gives us an opportunity to culminate. So it's sort of this moment of noticing what has been building and to acknowledge what has been building, and then to really choose what we want to keep and what we want to let go of. Maybe you're imagining releasing something from your heart. So all that's left is Shavasana. And if you're finding that this is feeling really good and you want to stay here, you're welcome to. If you're finding that you want to gently roll to one side and take a last pose before Shavasana, you could. You could also adjust into a Shavasana that works for you. So classically, we're just laying on the mat. A lot of people really like the bolster under the thighs. But there's also child's pose. There's legs up the wall. There's constructive rest, right? So whatever shape feels most comfortable in your body today is the right one. And if you are choosing to move, just take your time to get nice and comfortable. When you get there, you might want to take a deep breath. Just receive. Take a moment to notice how you're feeling. And if you're craving a longer Shavasana and you have the time to stay, you're more than welcome to. If this is feeling complete for you, you can begin to deepen your breath. Bring some small movements into your fingers and toes. You can take a stretch if you like. Draw your knees in and gently roll to one side. And if you are coming off of that bolster or prop underneath your chest, just take a moment to be curled to the side. Just enjoy that for a moment. Sort of the closing of the heart as we prepare to go through the rest of our day. And then gently making your way up to a comfortable seat. Hands together at your heart or over top or whatever works best for you. Bowing your mind, your hands, your heart, your breath, your belly, whatever it is you might be acknowledging and saying goodbye to today. Honoring and acknowledging the long and complex lineage of teachers that is with us in our yoga. Honoring and acknowledging the sacredness of the land that we practice on. Thank you for sharing your practice with me.